Anyone else wishing to speak?
Is it okay if I approach to?
Sure.
Thank you.
Could I have one? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Darlene Mond, 89 Corvo Drive in Hooksett, right off Hackett Hill. Got some neighbors up there on the board. Congratulations, everybody, and welcome. I have here in front of me 4 times I had to ask for this when I was at the special education meetings for my son, who was in 8th grade. This is the Hooksett Administrative Unit Number 15, Special Education Policies and Procedures Manual. 4 times I asked, 4 times I did not receive it. I looked back at the minutes and I did verify that I asked for it. I would like the board to motion that this special education manual be available on the website. It's very important that there's training for every single page of this manual has to be followed by special education. Looking what I handed out at you for you is the complaint process for special education. I have been trying for 3.5 years now to get my son the services he needs. He has a traumatic brain injury, post-concussive 3 times with loss of consciousness, Asperger's, now recognized nationally as autism, anxiety, and depression. I never talk about my son's diagnosis in public, but after a very discouraging and highly upsetting meeting where Christine Giliosis, the Director of Special Education, hired a $600 educational consultant from a law firm in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I am a parent. I'm also a volunteer advocate, and I get $15 to $20 an hour as a paid advocate. Everyone else gets $85 to $150. I'm also a certified community health advocate and worker for the state of New Hampshire. So I have a lot of experience over the last 3 years of discouragement, high blood pressure at less than 38 years old, and I would also like to introduce the board to my Bible, which I would like the principals to all have a copy of, assistant principals, and the superintendent. I know Mrs. Pollack most likely has a copy. This is the Bible of special education in the state of New Hampshire. It's called the New Hampshire Rules for the Education of Children with Disabilities. Whenever anyone on the team tries to pull the wool over my eyes, including the educational consultant, his name was Michael, he claimed to be a PhD. He told me, for example, transition services don't start until the child starts high school. I have this on recording, and I have this in the minutes that I'm going to be requesting in writing. In New Hampshire, transition services can start at age 14 with team agreement. A $600 an hour educational consultant PhD gave bad information on a recording. I had the purple book with me. I have it memorized. Hooksett taxpayers, you just lost $600 in funding for somebody to try to beat a mother who is fighting for her son for the last 3.5 years. I've been fighting since November to get him a $500 iPad. The $500 includes all the apps that were recommended by Diana Petshower, who is contracted by the Department of Education as the assistive technology expert for the whole state of New Hampshire. I had to ask for her for a secondary evaluation because the first evaluation was done by a speech pathologist with very little training in assistive technology. Today, my son called me from Colley's office having a severe anxiety attack because he has to do a 5-page paper. If he would have been given his assistive technology that's been recommended in November, he would have had that paper done by dictation. With the iPad 3, there's a little microphone on the keyboard. He can sit down, put his feet up. He would have had it done in 20 minutes. But instead, he was on the phone with me for 20 minutes.
Excuse me, could I stop you for a minute?
Sure, sure.
And I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh, no.
However, the board does have a certain amount of time that they allow.
Yes.
If you have a request or something that you want to request, please, and I understand where you're coming from, but
Yeah.
I need to, okay?
May I have someone motion for a 30-second extension, please? Okay, do you want me to wrap it up? So my request was that I would like the board to seriously consider putting this on the website so that every special ed parent or someone who thinks their child may be having a learning difficulty knows the process and knows what to do, because trust me, nobody will tell you what to do in Hooksett. And I thank you for your time. I also want to leave you the statistics of all the disabled children in the state of New Hampshire. And I'll be doing a right to know request in Hooksett to get all the complaints that were filed against Hooksett with the Department of Education. And I found lawsuits online as well of special education parents who had to, and when Hooksett has to go to court for due process, again, they're paying $200 to $300 an hour for an educational attorney. It's a loss of taxpayers' funds, and the law should be followed automatically.
So do you have a request or?
Yeah, my request was that the
Okay.
policies be put online, so I wouldn't have had to ask 4 times and then do a right to know request.
Okay, okay.
And I have ordered 10 copies of my Bible for all of the school board members. And so you can all know the procedures on all your free time. Right? Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
I thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
My name is Kate Griffin, 41 Main Street, and I'm here tonight advocating for my 2nd grade son. The Department of Education recently ruled that in the first 62 days of the school year, the staff at Underhill failed to provide him with 81 units of his special education services. The translation is that he did not receive academic services for 40 of the first 62 days of school this year. I am baffled as to how something like this can happen. A couple of thoughts cross my mind. The staff is simply not paying attention, which calls into question their competency. The culture of the school is such that staff don't feel comfortable speaking up, or perhaps the staff speak up but their concerns are ignored. Everyone involved in this violation against my son shares some responsibility. The special educator for not providing my son with his services, his one-on-one aide for not going to administration, his classroom teacher for not telling someone she was in over her head needed more support, Mr. Barstow for either not providing a culture where his staff felt they could go to him, or if they did, for him not addressing it, and for not checking on his staff to make sure they were performing their assigned duties. Even Chris Gialosis for not doing a better job of trying to remedy the situation despite our several discussions. I feel the staff and administration completely took advantage of the fact that my son cannot speak for himself. It's disgraceful that something like this can happen. I send my son to school having complete faith that he will be given every chance, every day, only to find out that this is not the case. I know there will be no admittance of guilt and no apology, which I don't understand, seeing as they teach children to do these very things. However, the fact remains that they didn't do what they were legally obligated to, and it is on record with the
Excuse me.
Department of Ed.
I hate to stop you where you are. Do you have a request?
I just have one more.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
I hope that going forward, there is accountability and people do the right thing simply because it's the right thing. All children in Hooksett deserve an education we can be proud of. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Tricia Corkus, 46 Dale Road, Hooksett, New Hampshire. I'm just here to commend the Hooksett School District on an absolutely fabulous job that your special education department has done for my family personally. I have a child who is in 6th grade who, for part of his educational experience, has been less than easy. And I feel on his IEP team that I am a full member of his team, and we work together to do what is best for Elijah, and I have never gotten any pushback on any suggestion that I have made or been willing to do anything that the school has suggested might help him. And he is a 6th grader here at the Colling Middle School who is thriving. He is in his they're in their 3rd term, so he's been on the honor roll twice, and it looks like he will be on the honor roll for his 3rd time. And as his mom, I never thought I would see that, and he is doing wonderful, and I contribute his success to the special education department here in Hooksett and everything that they have done for him. And I just wanted to go on the record as saying how very thankful I am to every administrator who has had anything to do with the education of my son Elijah and how well he is doing here at the Colling Middle School. And I was that nervous parent who came on 2 tours last summer because this scared me. But he is doing absolutely wonderful. He navigates between classes primarily by himself with people looking out for him. He doesn't feel like he is separate from anybody or that he's any different than any other kid in the building, and I just really wanted to thank the Hooksett School District for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I actually went to Central class of 95 with Mrs. McHugh's sons, and my brothers were classmates with your older 2 sons. And so it's a small world. I wanted to address the woman who spoke first. She actually left the room in tears. She has spoke to the board previously about her other special needs child who had many compliance violations. That child also had complaints to the Department of Education. It's public knowledge. She has spoken in front of the board before about this. I have watched every single meeting. This is the most professional meeting that I've seen.
Excuse me, could I stop you?
Sure, go ahead.
And ask you to consider this. If those are issues, as Dr. Littlefield said earlier, that pertain to individual students, okay, those are confidential, and I don't feel that it really is appropriate to air them out at a public meeting.
But because she spoke publicly, that's why
And
I'm
I
bringing it
agree
up.
with that. but
Otherwise, I would never bring up for
Okay, I guess what I would suggest, that the best course of action would be for you to call the superintendent's office and make an appointment and
I have.
and deal with that first and foremost to see if you can resolve it, because I don't really feel that it's appropriate to have students' names or for us to be dealing with things that should be kept confidential. It's not for the board to be dealing with. The superintendent's office.
And when the prior, not to interrupt you, but when Mrs. Griffin was speaking, she wasn't told the same thing. So,
and
her child's name wasn't mentioned, and my child's name is not being mentioned as well. What I wanted to say is I have watched all of the board meetings or attended. This is the most professional meeting I've ever seen, and congratulations, everybody. I have never seen 2 parents with enough guts come out to complain and beg for help for the special education process. I have never seen it. Keep in mind the compliment that you heard about special education came from the former chair and PTA president. Special treatment, perhaps, perhaps not. What I wanted to bring the board attention to is with the complaint that we just heard publicly, This is the state book on special education. Mediation, Dr. Littlefield, is not compliant. What that means is it is up to the parent and up to the team to decide. The parent does not have to go to mediation. From what I just heard, 40 service days missed out of 60.
We're not gonna
I'm
discuss-
estimating. Again, it was on public record,
I
public
know
minutes.
it's on public record, but we're not going to discuss that aspect of it, okay? If you have something else that you want to add with regard
Okay, well,
to,
okay, how about?
special education, I'll
Of
certainly.
course I
entertain-
do.
Okay?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any infraction of the sort, I'm referring to page 160. This is called the Purple Book. I'll be driving up to the DOE and picking up the copies and distributing them at the next meeting. The lawyer fees for the parent would have to be paid for by the district. This is all from the book. We're talking $200 to $250 an hour for a special ed lawyer. It's not cheap. Also, there's civil actions, civil lawsuits can be brought against the district. It's all in black and white. So if special education is not reformed, there's going to be some very serious and very heavy expenses for Hooksett, because I have been fighting for 3.5 years, and I'm talking advocates. I'm the third family on my street with an advocate, and that's $75 an hour. I'm a single mom. I'm paying a babysitter right now for my 2 children just so I can come and speak about special education. People approach me publicly all the time, and I beg them to come and speak at the meetings, but they're afraid of retribution. I have emailed the board. I was threatened by DCYF, by one of our nice principals over here.
I think.
My daughter is on a 504
Could you-
plan.
Excuse me, could you be careful in how you refer to the individuals that?
Oh,
are
of course, I'm very careful not to name names, but I have not complained to the Department of Ed in 3.5 years, although I have more than 20 complaints written down in very careful record keeping. I have never filed a complaint because I'm born and raised in Hooksett. I believe in Hooksett. However, special education in Hooksett is completely dysfunctional. When you have a parent leaving a meeting in tears, is proof positive that there's something very wrong with special education. The Director of Special Education, Christine Giuliosis.
We're not going to discuss, we're not going to give individual names. I asked you before to please not to do that, okay? As I told you before, I think the best course of action is for you to call the superintendent's office.
I have done everything. It has
I
not
think
worked.
you need to follow up from there.
The only
with-
other way I can do it, Madam Chair, is through filing a complaint. The minute a complaint is filed, an investigator from the state hits Hooksett schools. They go through the whole record, and they will find every single compliant violation that there is. They will make Hooksett correct it, which is going to cost money. Hooksett Underhill School.
Have the complaint written out?
Oh, I cannot obtain that private information from each student. But
No,
do you
I'm saying
mean
your
the
complaint
complaint
this evening.
process?
This evening, do you have, is that what?
I am meeting with Mrs. Pollock on Thursday for my individual complaints.
Okay,
This complaint that I'm coming through with tonight is more a message from the new board that you have children that are very much suffering. And I have told the previous board, but I'd like to just let the new board know. My daughter was hit by a tractor-trailer truck in July 25th, 2013. We're still both recuperating. We're in physical therapy. You can see how hard the classroom chairs are, and with various musculoskeletal injuries. She's in pain every day. The other day, my daughter fell and has a suspected fracture of her right wrist. Nobody called my emergency contact when I couldn't be reached. So my daughter, with her injuries from the tractor-trailer accident,
excuse me.
she's on a 504 plan.
Excuse me, I think that's something that you have to report to both
I have.
the building principal
I have,
and to the superintendent's office.
in writing, I have. This is what I'm saying is the dysfunction. For 3.5 years, I've have a bin this big of my own children's records. So you can imagine the other parents suffering and being ignored and ignored and ignored until I myself trained professionally to become an advocate, and I myself am being recruited by the
Excuse me,
State Leadership
excuse me.
Conference to become an advocate for the Disabled, American with Disabilities Acts. So not only am I wanting to speak about special education, but also the American with Disabilities Act, Section 504. So if any of your children were in a car accident and they had to sit all day long on a wooden chair, do you think they could do that with a cracked sacrum or with a head injury that my own child sustained? So what I'm asking is, put yourself in the shoes of the parent who has to beg and beg and beg and incur enormous advocate bills that we have to pay monthly on for years because we can't get any help from Hooksett. And
Okay,
I need it to change, because what will happen,
I've heard exactly what you have to say, but I beg you for the last time to ask you to take your complaint to the building principal in the
Which I
form
have.
of a letter,
which I have.
okay? And we'll look into it, in the form of a letter, so that the letter goes to the superintendent's office so that he is duly advised.
I would be very happy
I
with
mean-
that thing. I would be very happy if that procedure could be followed, because I have done everything that I possibly
I would
could.
appreciate it if you could do that.
Other parents are approaching me. Again, they're afraid of retribution for the very same reason that happened to me myself. This is why I am the voice of not just myself, but many, and I'm very glad another parent could come out with enough guts to speak out for her children. And this is also not just special education. I want to remind everyone, it's also Section 504 of the American with Disabilities Act that is not being followed for my own child, too.
Thank you,
Okay, thank you so much.
thank you. Anyone else?